Right, shall we? I think we're leveling off on the attendees joining. Shall we? Are we ready to go, guys? All good. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Jill Brittlebank. I am Head of Client Solutions here at Bloom. And today we wanted to talk about supporting the Levelling Up Fund project delivery. Obviously, levelling up represents a huge opportunity for you to gain investment in your local area to the tune of 4.8 billion nationally. What we want to do is share our experience and learning around some of the key elements of the fund delivery. So some of the award criteria and delivery mechanics. We're going to talk first of all about levelling up and the key callouts, then around the social value elements of the awards criteria and delivery, and then a little bit about the net zero opportunities as well. We'll be looking to answer the questions that you have at the end, but please do post them in the question section at the bottom of the screen as we go through. As obviously, if there are any questions of clarity, we will try to address those as we go along, but sort of broader questions we'll pick up at the end, but do feel free to post them as we go along. And on that note, I think that's all the housekeeping I need to do. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague James, who's going to talk about the key callouts for levelling up.
Thanks, Jill. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm James Kent, a Client Solutions Director at Bloom, and I'm delighted to be supporting today on the Levelling Up webinar. And a little bit about me, I joined the business back in September last year, and essentially I work very closely with our customers, connecting them to our proposition, also involved in the initial project setup, making sure that we got the right team and infrastructure in place to support you, and also working very closely with the suppliers in our marketplace. So the levelling up, for those on the webinar, I'm sure you're all familiar with levelling up. There may be some learnings for you as well if you're thinking about bidding for the next round of levelling up, but we thought we'd start off with some key call outs. So as Jill articulated, 4.8 billion has been made available by the UK government to support communities across the UK for available up until the 24-25 financial year. And I guess the main assessment criteria is around that characteristics of place. So the fund will prioritise places at the lower level local authorities and that most in need of economic recovery and growth, regeneration and transport connectivity. And you'll have noted that the index was released P1 to P3, obviously P1 being identified as a higher priority and the places of most in need of support. The first round is also underpinned by three key themes. So those are transport investment, regeneration, town centre and cultural investment as well. And the fund will focus on investment on projects that require less than £20 million of funding, with the exception of larger transport projects, which are 50 million available. Local authorities can submit a number of bids worth up to 20 million in line with the number of MPs within the boundaries, with local authorities able to submit at least one bid at a minimum. In the first round of funding, the government will prioritise projects which are able to demonstrate investment or begin delivery on the ground in 21-22 financial year. And a key thing there is that, you know, we're not going to get the awards or the understanding of the awards until autumn. So you really need to think about, you know, your routes to market there, because there are key assessment criteria of, you know, doing it efficiently, but also generating best value for money. And that is where Bloom and the NEAT Pro 3 solution can support you. And we're going to bring that further to life with some of the case studies and what we're seeing in the marketplace as well. The final point is for any bidding entry submitting a package. They must clearly show how the components are all kind of intertwined and the elements are aligned with each other. And again, the NEAT Pro 3 framework has 20 categories, so there'll be opportunity there for you to run multiple projects or as part of that package simultaneously, whether that's through our housing category, whether that's through our highways category or construction category as well. So next slide, please, Alex. Thank you. So we're now going to look at the key areas of consideration and the governance. So the assessment criteria focuses around 4 areas. So the first one is that characteristics of place. So identifying areas which are most need in economic recovery, growth, regeneration, and improved transport connectivity. They then focus on the deliverability, so how you're able to evidence that you are able to kind of essentially hit the ground running and begin works within this financial year, but also based on the supplementary finance as well as part of the package that you're putting towards the individual projects. We're also looking at the strategic fit with local and fund priorities. So how are they aligned to your local plans? How are they aligned to your local authority strategies? But crucially as well, have you got that stakeholder buy-in? Have you been engaging with the community and those key influencers and understood and taken on board what it is that they would like to see to positively impact their community? And lastly, value for money, evidencing, that you're going to get a strong return on investment as part of this bid. Is it going to, stimulate further investment into that as well, and also generally just making it a better place to live for your community. Next slide. So again, if we're looking at the awarding criteria, so there is 3 stages. The first stage is obviously a pass and fail gateway. So it's going to be assessed literally on whether you can start to deliver on the levelling up funding expenditure within this financial year. The second stage will be an assessment and shortlisting. So bids are then going to be assessed against the 4 criteria that we've just spoken about in the previous slide. And then finally, once the bid is assessed and the shortlists are drawn up, ministers will then ultimately make the final decision on the funding and the packages that they're wishing to award. Now, there's another really key important thing to note as well, that to ensure the projects are delivered to programme and budget, you will have evidenced, or you should be thinking about how you're going to evidence for future funding, for future funding, your financial contribution, which must be at least 10% of the total costs as well. Now, some of the key considerations and initiatives. So projects should be aligned to and support the UK government's net zero commitments. Now, my colleague Paul Mander is going to bring that further to life later and talk to you a little bit about what we're seeing in the marketplace and how we're supporting customers with their net zero goals. Social value. So again, my colleague Sarah McNabb is going to be talking all things social value, but within the bid, it'd be evidencing how you're going to be stimulating those local economies, your commitments to SMEs, and also the impact on the environment. And it's important to note, within our marketplace, 88% of contracts are awarded to SMEs, and with a government aspiration of 33% of contracts to be awarded to SMEs by the end of 2022, we are best placed to support you with that and giving you access to those specialist suppliers. Another key thing as well, and we're waiting for some further guidance to be published, but the projects, or to provide assurances that the projects are delivering value for money and are on time, the Levelling Up Fund are going to produce a robust, coherent monitoring system. So we're waiting for a monitoring and evaluation framework to be published, which is going to support the development of project level evaluations and national level evaluations as well.
James, sorry to interrupt. There's a quick question about whether we'll be making the slides available at the end. We'll certainly be making a recording available and sharing that around. If you would like copies of the documents, then we won't be sending it around on a mass email, but we'll make a note and send them out to you directly.
Thank you, Jill. Thanks, Alex. Next slide. So now we wanted to focus on what we're currently seeing in the marketplace, and we've identified 3 key case studies of projects that would closely mirror or echo the types of projects that you are looking funding for or thinking about bidding for. So if we focus on the first project, this is a regeneration project. So it's with a northeast customer, and it's a construction project to develop economic regeneration. So exactly what it is that the Levelling Up Fund is looking to achieve. It's an office build within the digital hub, and it's to enable further growth. Now, fortuitously, the actual project value was 20 million. So the top end estimate of the funding that you can bid for. The professional services element that could filter through the NEET Pro 3 framework is 2.4 million. And there was a real key focus on social value. So what did we do and how did we add value? So we worked very closely and collaborated with our customers and devised a short list of suitable suppliers that were aligned to their key requirements and ultimately their specification. We then ran the mini competition on their behalf, and we delivered 20% savings, so £500,000, so a significant amount of savings back into the public purse. But crucially as well, we embedded and ensured the delivery of social value through stimulating that local supply chain and stimulating employment opportunities as well. And again, Sarah will talk a little bit more about our social value goals a little bit later. If we look at the next case study. Alex. Alex? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So the next case study is a highways project. Again, one of the key themes that underpins the first wave of levelling up funding. This was again for another Northeast customer, and it was the development of a public footbridge to ensure greater connectivity and access for new residential builds. So the professional services was £410,000, but crucially for this customer, they needed a really efficient contract award due to initial project delay. And again, if the funding isn't awarded until October, November, it's thinking how we can hit the ground running to procure and begin the works as part of the key stipulations and one of the key requirements to fall within this financial year. So what did we do? Well, we obtained the specification on the 17th of December. So we had to adapt and react to that. And we ran the exercise over Christmas and extended it to early New Year to make sure that we had a robust supplier response. But crucially as well, we were able to contract and have the project start delivery on the 24th of January. So benchmarked against those traditional procurement methods, it was a very, very efficient route to market. And obviously we were able to support that customer, and we will be able to kind of replicate that approach for any projects that or for any funding that you're awarded as part of the levelling up. The last case study is around cultural regeneration. Again, another key theme underpinning this wave of funding. And this was a refurbishment and renovation of a historical building to improve visitor circulation, energy efficiency, but also building access as well, access to the building. Professional services budget was 1.3 million, and there was a real key focus on decarbonisation, which again, my colleague Paul Mander will touch on a little bit later. So crucially, an SME was awarded to the contract. And again, 88% of our contracts are awarded to SMEs, but you can absolutely access the really big players through us as well. The decarbonisation initiative was delivered, working towards the authority's net zero goals, and again, significant savings made against that budget. So hopefully that gives you an insight of what we're currently seeing in the market, the types of projects that you will have been bidding for, and how we are adding value and working very strategically with our customers, operating as an extension of their team. Now, the next slide, and as I said, we can send you category lists on request, but the breadth and depth of the NEPRO framework is considerable and should really lend itself well to these projects, crucially as well to those package projects as well that we touched on a little bit earlier. So as you can see, we won't go through all of those projects, but point 10, highways and transport, 11, housing and community, 4, construction, design and engineering, and 19, social care. These can all be accessed through the framework and can be running simultaneously as part of that package. And again, as I said, we'll send any category lists for those that wish to access them as part of the follow-up. And the final slide before I hand over to Sarah is just to show the breadth and depth of one of our categories, and we focus primarily on construction. So 260 construction projects filtered through the framework in 2020. It's our largest category, and it spans right across major regeneration projects to smaller construction projects. There are 13 subcategories under the construction category to choose from, and they're ranging from you can procure architectural services, structural engineers, cost consultants, contract administrators, etc. As I highlighted, we're involved in new build housing, REBA stages 1 to 7, decarbonisation, and major regeneration projects. And as to show the commitment and the diversity of the marketplace, if we're focusing primarily on architectural services, we have 187 suppliers in the north. But to show our commitment to the SMEs, 164 of those are specialist SMEs. Again, replicated in the south, 196 suppliers, and 173 of those are SMEs. So we have a very rich and diverse framework. And to highlight some of those SMEs that have delivered regeneration projects, we have May, BBA, Fox Brown and McKenna. But as I said, you can absolutely access the really big players as well. The Maces, the ACOMs, the Jacobs, the Arabs, etc. So again, we have a very rich and diverse, evolving marketplace. We have the agility to onboard suppliers at any time. So firstly, thank you very much for your time. I hope that's been insightful. I'm now going to hand over to Sarah McNabb, who's going to talk about all things social value. So Sarah.
Great, thanks very much, James. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Sarah McNabb and I'm Head of Social Value at Bloom Procurement Services. So my role within the business is to lead and manage on our social value programme, including our social value commitments and also all of the activity that spans across the entirety of the business. So I work very closely with all of the teams across Bloom, ensuring that social value is embedded throughout the entire operation, And I also engage with our stakeholders to understand their social value goals and objectives and to help align them to each individual project. Next slide, please, Alex. So Bloom is extremely passionate about creating social value and making an impact wherever we possibly can. And social value forms part of our decision-making processes. It's at the forefront of all of our conversations, and it runs right through the veins of our business. So we work closely with our stakeholders to help them deliver on their social value goals and objectives. And we also strive to obtain their feedback to ensure that they have been consulted if there is any changes to be made to internal sort of policies or processes and anything to do with our technology platform as well. So we measure, manage and maximise the social value that we create as a business using the national TOMS model. So TOMS stands for Themes, Outcomes and Measures. And this model was created by Social Value Portal, and it is also updated by Social Value Portal as well. So we use the data from the TOMS model to help us to make informed decisions, produce impact reports, and also to plan sort of further social value activity in the coming months or throughout the year. So we regularly report and provide data reports to our stakeholders just to ensure that they know what social value achievements have been actually made by sort of putting projects in place and the impact that they're having on their local communities as well. So we have and provide an end-to-end fair and transparent process. We put all suppliers on a level playing field and we give everyone a chance to bid for opportunities. So we have a range of accredited suppliers of all shapes and sizes, ranging from one-man bands to VCSEs, SMEs, and also the larger and more national suppliers as well are also accredited with us. Next slide, please, Alex. So social value is embedded and incorporated in our policies, within our processes and our technology platform as well, and across all levels of the organisation. So we have a social value policy and a strategy which sets out our social value plans and goals for the entirety of the year. And we do sort of review that annually, but if things happen, so such as COVID, it's not set in stone. So we do review it and we do update what we're going to be doing around social value activities. So again, it's reviewed annually, but it can be sort of looked at throughout the course of the year. Our technology platform has built-in social value questions, both at registration stage and also at evaluation stage as well. So at the registration stage, we can ask a supplier sort of basic social value questions around do they have a policy? What are they doing internally? Do they have any of their own initiatives? And that just really gives us a flavour for what that supplier knows about social value. Are they delivering social value? And then we can pass that information on to our customers as well. The evaluation stage, we have a library of social value questions that align with the TOMS model. So we align those with the themes of the TOMS model so they can be used at evaluation stage. However, if there's something that a customer has, they have their own initiative or they have their own questions they want to use, it's very flexible, so we can include those as well. And it just helps us to build our library and include more questions so others can use them as well. So social value also forms part of our internal induction process. So for every employee that joins Bloom, they have a social value induction, which flows right through their development plans. And also social value forms part of every sort of meeting that we have. So it forms part of our agenda. We have it as an item at team meetings, business stand-up for updates, and also board meetings as well. So we have committed to delivering a £42 million social value programme for the entirety of the NIPRO contract. But in the year and a half that we have been delivering the NIPRO 3 framework, we've already sort of created over £54 million worth of social value for the public sector. So we're very proud of that. And that's something that we continue to embed and to maximise sort of throughout the entirety of the contract. We've also got some other really good achievements that we've delivered over that year and a half. One of them being the amount of projects that we've awarded to the local supply chain. So in that year and a half, we've awarded over £196 million worth of projects to local suppliers, which again is a phenomenal number and we're really proud of. And we also have 80% of our supply chain of an SME status. So there's also lots of suppliers that work with us or that can become accredited with us at any point in time. So we consider ourselves as thought leaders in this social value space, and we do provide help, advice, support and guidance to both private and public sector clients. So we continue to identify and maximise the impact of social value. We also are the only procurement company to have been awarded the levels 1 and 2 management certificate from Social Value UK. And again, that's something we're really proud of. And this management certificate really does look at the standards of an organisation and the practices and also the social value that they create through the activities that they deliver. So for us, that certificate has helped us to sort of improve practices, maximise our social value, and also helped us to take the necessary steps to be able to manage our social value activity as well. If we go on to the next slide, please, Alex. Thank you. So ways to maximise impact. Just some sort of key points from me is, number one, early stakeholder engagement is absolute key. Communication is key. So having those conversations about social value, embedding social value in a project really needs to happen at the point that you're kind of talking about the project before you've wrote the specification. We need to understand those outcomes and we need to understand what you want to achieve from a project. So that communication is absolute key throughout any process. Again, we've talked about access to all levels of the supply chain through the entirety of the framework. So we have 80% of our supply chain that are of an SME status. But if you have a project that you want to bring on some more local suppliers and they're not already registered with us, we can do that at any point in time of this contract. So it's very flexible. We can onboard that supplier and give them that opportunity to be able to bid. Also, a health and wellbeing programme, an internal health and wellbeing programme is essential just for looking after staff, ensuring they have the necessary tools to be able to help support the customers. So again, social value forms part of that health and wellbeing programme. We want to make sure that our staff understand social value so they can help our customers to sort of achieve and align their goals as well. So having a robust health and wellbeing programme is very important. We have a range of reporting and dashboards. I've already mentioned that we quantify our social value using the TOMS model, but we also have a range of dashboards where we can monitor outcomes, and those reports show things such as how many projects have been awarded to a local supplier. We can look at percentages, we could look at savings. So any particular point of the process, we can run reports at the click of a button. Some of our customers like to see reporting sort of quarterly, annually. It is entirely up to you, and we can really help support you on that. So the inclusion of social value at the specification stage, again, is very important, and I think that links into early communication as well, just to ensure that you know what you want from a project, you know what your outcomes are, so we can really build a robust specification to include social value. And again, having 10% of the criteria sort of assigned to social value is really important. Anything lower than that, it becomes more of a tick box exercise. So to really get the benefits and to maximise that social value and maximise the impact, we really need to be looking at aligning 10% at evaluation stage. And I think, sorry, I'm going to pass over to Paul, but just making sure that we have that communication running throughout all stages of the process, ensuring that we understand social value, ensuring that our customers understand social value, and here to help facilitate any process. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. And good afternoon, everybody. My name's Paul Mander. I'm Procurement Director at Bloom. And actually, I was really interested in being involved in the webinar today because I think we as a business work solely with the public sector, and there are a number of initiatives that come out through government that have a major impact on the people that we work with. Now, obviously, the Levelling Up Fund is a really good example of how we're looking to kind of regenerate economies town centres. I can, look at my own kind of town centre. I live near Sunderland, and actually, the opportunity to do some really significant things there is fantastic. I think the challenge that we all face is that there are a number of other initiatives that kind of have an impact on that. And I'm going to talk a bit about net zero today, but actually, other things that have come out, like Sarah's described around social value, are all things that we need to take into consideration when we're thinking about bidding for funding, and then actually how we are spending that money. And I think that's something that we as an organisation are very familiar with, and why we kind of wanted to talk to you all today. If we can just move on, Alex, that would be great. So in general, kind of the whole thing about the net zero commitment, and kind of myself, when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about, well, hang on, where did all this start? How did we get to this point? And also then, how do we make the best of it to kind of generate an outcome that is going to be really positive for us as a country and individual kind of citizens within the UK? Our kind of commitments around net zero were significant, actually. So actually, achieving net zero by 2050, it feels like a long way off, but actually that time just kind of ticks away and ebbs away. And actually, I was thinking to myself only the other day, we went into lockdown 18 months ago, and that time has flown. And actually, we'll find that time moves on, and actually we need to have a really clear strategy about how we're going to be achieving that. There has to be kind of economic growth that's associated with that, because this presents opportunity. The kind of green economy, green energy, retrofit, all sorts of things that actually can be a real positive in terms of how we achieve the net zero commitments. It's really interesting to us. We work with quite a few local authorities, and when we look at the kind of commitments that some of them have made are extremely ambitious. So actually kind of achieving net zero by some as soon as 2025 is absolutely massive. And actually, I picked this up as a kind of reference point, really, but it was quite interesting about kind of local authorities. And actually, direct emissions was around 2%, but actually the influence that local authorities have over their place is significant. And they reference here around up to 70% of emissions can be influenced within that kind of those local boundaries. So there's sorts of things that we see as an organisation, kind of the sorts of projects that are coming through. And James referenced some of the examples of projects that we've done before. And I'll talk a little bit about that myself as well. If we can move on, Alex. Something that kind of I think everybody will be familiar with, or at least have had sight of. The procurement policy note that came out in June was around net zero and carbon reduction. And actually, this was something that was very much focused on major contracts and focused on central government as well. But actually, we kind of know that, yes, that will have an impact, and that is fantastic. But actually, what I've just described there in terms of locally, there is a significant amount of work to do. So there's some learning, I think, that can be taken from this procurement policy note that we can translate into the work that we do. So we at Bloom kind of look at this and say, well, actually, how can we help organisations that we're already working with to kind of be ahead of the game and actually be able to kind of demonstrate that we're already doing some of these things? So actually, when we're considering about kind of bidding for funds, whether that's levelling up or anything else, taking these sorts of things into consideration is a huge opportunity. Now, the policy note as it stands is actually for all contracts over £5 million. And it will go live not until September of this year. But actually, there is a requirement then for suppliers to start considering their own position around carbon reduction, confirming their commitments and having what they would term a carbon reduction plan to make sure that that can be achieved. So actually, all of those things, the way that we operate as an organisation is that when we are going out through effectively the bidding process and the procurement process, we can factor these things in, which is obviously a significant opportunity for organisations that we work with. The other thing I did want to mention here was just about kind of climate change in general. So actually, there's quite a lot. There's a lot going on. We've got. I'll make reference to kind of COP26, which is taking place in Glasgow, and that will all be focused around climate change. So I think this policy note is definitely the start of other things coming through the line. And actually, we try to position ourselves as an organisation to be able to help and offer kind of guidance and leadership around that, just as Sarah described around social value. So Alex, we just move on. I wanted to talk a bit about some kind of practical steps that, this is a general point. It's not about using Bloom, but this is just about kind of how we can kind of get the most from organisations that we work with through collaboration, and whether this is around levelling up or broader than that. Actually, this is things that you should be thinking about, and we see day to day. The Net Zero Innovation Programme I'm going to mention is actually run through the LGA, and actually that's something that where collaboration is really, really helping to kind of consider how we share information, and actually how we get the most from some of the projects that we've done before. And that's something that kind of really resonates for us. We have around about 1,200 projects live at any one time. We've delivered kind of over 8,000 projects. So my point here really is that there's lots of things that we do that probably could help you as well. So things like standard specifications around certain projects that we've done that may be useful to you. Some of the thinking, what worked, what didn't work. Helping to inform specifications is something that we consider kind of part of our day-to-day support for you as organisations as well. There's a really interesting point that I picked up from actually another webinar that I was involved in. I was on the panel for, and actually was talking about achieving net zero and taking a very much a holistic approach to what you're doing. So actually, whilst we're talking about levelling up, and James very eloquently kind of put through exactly how that's being measured and monitored and everything else, but actually that is one part of your estate. It's one part of what you do as organisations. And actually considering that the wider estate, the wider organisation and the wider impact is really, really important. So actually, by doing that, actually can get some real benefits. So not just benefits from, well, I've achieved and I've got some levelling up funding and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Actually, by doing X, Y, and Z, I'm going to achieve A, B, and C. And I think that's where, joining those dots will help to achieve net zero much more quickly. I think for us, we have done a number of projects around decarbonisation and net zero. A lot of those around kind of feasibility studies, things that have been kind of mooted as ideas. Actually, are they viable? And we've done a lot of those kind of almost that sort of prerequisite to thinking, well, actually, should we be bidding for this? How should we be bidding? What's the opportunity? And again, they're sorts of projects, and we have those sorts of suppliers who can actually help with that and inform that thinking. And finally here, I've just put a kind of action in really around, this is one of the action points out of the procurement policy note, and about assessing kind of suppliers, not just their technical and professional ability, but actually thinking about their commitments to net zero, what impact that will have on you as an organisation. Sarah referenced kind of local suppliers, and actually what additional benefit can that provide, not just from a net zero point of view, but also from a social value perspective and a broader kind of local economic regeneration. So as I say, to summarise really, from our perspective, we are here to help you. We certainly have lots of examples, I think, of good practice, things that have worked well, things that perhaps we've learned from as well, working with our buyers and suppliers. We really want to kind of focus on helping you to release kind of additional benefits from the projects that you commission via Bloom. And actually, we can really help you. And the earlier that we engage with you, the better. So do think about that, because actually we're not a framework in a traditional sense. Actually, we're very much a kind of managed service and here to support you. So I'm going to wrap up there and hand back to Jill, who's going to kind of summarise where we're at, and then we're going to talk, hopefully take some Q&A. Thank you.
I'm actually going to keep it very small, short and sweet, Paul, because I think you summarised beautifully for me there. Thank you. So really, I think from across the three presentations, we've touched on a few things. James mentioned right up front the delivering reporting and evaluation requirements underpinning the funds allocation, and Paul's mentioned that we have a range of suppliers on the framework or on the marketplace who can support with that. Both Sarah and Paul talked around the wider impact of the projects being important in the way that you consider your application, and then hopefully your successful use of the levelling up funding, and the importance of collaborating for efficiency, but also for maximum impact. So, you know, the opportunity to incorporate the social value and net zero commitments into significant investments that will deliver incremental benefit over and above the direct impact of the projects is fairly unique, and something that really we can't underplay in terms of the importance of that early thinking and early consultation. So I'm going to move to Q&A now. I've replied separately to those of you who've requested the slides, so thank you for that. There are a couple of questions, and James, they relate to the case study. The first question was around the first case study that you talked about in your presentation. So how much was the contingency money in the 20 million? I'm not sure whether we have that detail, but
we don't, but I mean, the 20 million was the total project value. We were obviously supporting for the professional services element, but I can certainly go and ask the commercial manager. And I think it's important to note, you know, the customers that enter the marketplace are allocated a commercial manager, and they can essentially support them throughout the life cycle of the project, but also holistically as well on an organisational level. So I can certainly take that away and ask the commercial manager and try and get that answer for Nick.
Great, thank you. And then Nick had a second question, actually, which I think is a broad one. So what is the bidding process, and how long are we allowing for the process?
So essentially, we're led by you. Ultimately, it's very much your project. We are here to complement. We're not here to take over. We are a very efficient route to market. So, you know, we've got SLAs both for mini competitions, and we can also be a vehicle for a direct award. And they are 23 working days from the specification being finalised and approved to the contract being awarded. Now, I must stress that is an average across the projects that we're seeing. But for projects of really high value and strategic importance, you know, we're giving a minimum of 3 weeks for suppliers to ensure that you get a robust supplier response. But ultimately, we can be very flexible in that approach and be led by you. Ultimately, as well, if it's very timely and time specific, you know, we can reduce that considerably. Yeah. So ultimately, we're led by you, but we can be very flexible in our approach. Yeah. Paul, did you want to add anything to that, Paul?
No, nothing to add. I think just to say that, you know, quite rightly, James is pointing out there around the flexibility. And I think, you know, for us, it's much more about finding the right organisation to deliver what it is that you need, the outcomes that you require. So that's something that we would work in kind of consultation with on.
Fab, thank you. Just looking at the other questions, they're all relating to copies of the slides. So as I said at the start, we will be sending by default a copy of the recording, so a link to the recording rather, sorry. And then if you want a PDF of the presentation itself, I've made a note of those of you that recorded, or just drop us an email to either myself, James, at so our first name dot last name at bloom.services, and we'll be able to get arranged for that to be sent through to you. There's a better email on the screen now. Thanks, Alex. So if you email actually into inquiries@bloom.services, that'll save us, James and I, being a total bottleneck on sending you the slides. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attention and interest today. Really appreciate it, and hope to speak to you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.